What's good, family? I wanted to talk real quick about the subject of forgiveness. Um, I'm 43 years old now. Maybe about 2 years ago, ended up getting back in touch with my father. Well, it actually had been 31 years since the last time I heard from my father. Growing up, I had a lot of resentment for him not being in my life and not being around. And my mother kind of was like big on telling me like, "Hey, he's not around. Your father's on drugs. He's addicted to drugs, and um, he's just not a good person." Da 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 da. But it was always this curiosity for who he was, and for a man, you need that reflection to be able to see some of your own traits and see, why is it I do some of the things I do, or some of my thoughts, and that DNA reflection is a good thing. It's a big thing for a man to be able to see who your father is. Well, growing up, I really didn't feel like I loved him. Didn't feel like I had any type of care for him, and I started building up this resentment, almost to a point where I can say, man, I hated the guy because he wasn't there. He wasn't involved. And I really was like, well, he turned his life over to drugs and went back down to New Orleans and left me out here by myself in Detroit in these streets. All of this bad stuff that I'd encountered that I didn't have a father to reach out to. Well, just recently, maybe about a year and a half ago, I ended up getting in touch with one of my cousins who equally, her father, had experienced the same thing with drugs, down there in Detroit. A lot of them started off interacting with drugs as if it was a party thing. And the party thing ended up turning over into, just as our generation was experimenting with marijuana. And this generation right now is experimenting with pills. And they don't know the aftermath of that. Well, they got caught up in it. Well, the difference is with her father and mine, who were brothers, is her father stayed. And here's what's significant about that. I tell her about it like, man, my father wasn't there. I always felt this resentment towards him. Really was upset about him not, being there for me and being there for my mama. And she said, well, here's my side of the story. He stayed. And she said it was hell, going through him, being there, and dealing with the habits of an addict, them stealing stuff, them taking stuff from for holidays and stealing important things out the house. Like, a lot of people who grow up with addicts in the home and they're stealing televisions and, Christmas money and significant things are being affected by the person who's on drugs. So then it pushed me back. It pushed me back to think, well, maybe that was the best thing for me and my mother is to not have him around. And I don't know if that was his motivation for not being there, but they gave me another side of the coin, and it kind of changed all of that hate and resentment I had, because I was like, maybe the best thing was for him not to be there. And then I had to stand back and look at who I turned out to be. And who I turned out to be ended up being a good thing. Because a lot of those things I reflected on that I didn't have as a son, I now give as a father. So from that standpoint, I was able to have some forgiveness in my heart for my father not being there. And, I felt like it was important, even at this age, to reestablish that relationship and not go back and try to refresh old wounds and being like, why, but just to move forward and rebuild, and rebuild that whole lineage between my children all the way up to their grandfather. And not have that resentment built in my heart that if a man chooses later in life to better themselves, that I should participate in that as well. That's just one of the things I want to stab out at. Hope y'all can take something from it.